A bitter wind howled through the open market square. Snowflakes spun and danced in the air as traders barked out prices, haggled over goods, and tossed insults like coins. But amidst the chaos stood something out of place. A raised wooden platform, not meant for crates of fruit or bundles of tools, but for people. Atop it stood a woman. No, not quite. An alien. Towering, broad-shouldered, her skin a pale green laced with silver markings. Her hands were bound tightly in front of her, her clothes torn, her proud eyes dulled by exhaustion. She had been there for hours. "She's too big," someone jeered from the crowd. "Who'd want that?" mocked another. "She'll smash the stage." Laughter rang out, sharp and cruel, slicing through the snow. The auctioneer, a wiry alien with razor-like teeth and twitchy fingers, banged his cane and forced a smile. "Come now. Strong, healthy, perfect for labor." No hands rose. "She's ugly. Worthless," shouted a voice. "Not even worth a single credit." Still, the woman said nothing. She didn't beg. She didn't weep. She stood tall, eyes fixed on a point far beyond the jeering crowd, as if already resigned to her fate. The auctioneer tried again. 10 credits. 5 more. Fine. 1 credit. Anyone. Silence. Some turned away, others smirked. A child pointed at her massive frame and laughed. But then, a voice, calm and clear, broke through the snow and murmurs. "I'll take her." Heads turned. A human man stepped forward, bearded, in a thick fur-collared coat. His expression was unreadable, calm but resolute. In his gloved hand, he held up a single credit. The auctioneer blinked. "You want her?" "Yes," the man said. "Let her down." A few laughed again. "He's mad," someone whispered. "Maybe he needs someone that size to carry his house," another sneered. The man ignored them all. He stepped through the crowd, boots crunching on snow, and stood before the alien woman. She looked down, eyes narrowed. Was this her new master? Another who'd cage her and beat her for failing? Then, slowly, he pulled a small knife from his belt, not to harm her, but to cut her ropes. Carefully, gently, he freed her wrists. Her arms dropped to her sides, lifeless from hours of restraint. She rubbed her wrists and stared at him. His eyes were warm, not soft, but kind. "What do you want from me?" she asked, voice low and rough. "To give you a place to rest," he replied. She frowned. That word, rest, didn't make sense. No one had ever wanted her to rest. "Do you own me now?" she asked. He shook his head. "I don't believe in owning people." "Then why pay for me?" He didn't answer right away. He looked past the crowd, past the falling snow, because no one else did. He turned, began walking away, then glanced over his shoulder. "Are you coming?" She hesitated. The crowd was still watching, still whispering. If she stayed, the auctioneer might chain her again. If she followed, who knew? But something ancient, buried deep in her chest, whispered, "Go." And so she stepped off the stage, slow, like a mountain relearning how to walk. The man handed her his coat. At first, she didn't take it, unsure if it was a trick, a test. But then, slowly, she wrapped it around her. It barely fit across her broad shoulders, but it was warm. They walked through the snow together, the market, the laughter, the cold platform slowly vanishing behind them. Somewhere in the crowd, someone muttered, "She'll be back." No one wants a thing like that. But they were wrong, because one man did. The alien woman followed him through narrow village streets, her heavy footsteps leaving deep prints in the snow. Every step forward felt unnatural, unfamiliar. No chains, no commands, no sneers, only the crunch of snow and the soft rhythm of breath beside her. Eventually, they reached a small wooden house at the village's edge. Plain, weathered by years of storms, but glowing warmly through its windows. He opened the door and turned to her. "Go on," he said gently. She froze at the threshold. The smell inside caught her off guard. Cooked food, burning wood, and something harder to name. Something soft, like comfort. She stepped in carefully, ducking to avoid the low frame, bracing for the scolding that never came. Her hulking body filled the hallway, every instinct telling her she'd be punished for stepping too far. But instead of a cage, she saw a blanket. A fire. A chair by the hearth. "Sit," he said. "I'll make tea." She sat on the floor instead, afraid the chair might snap beneath her weight. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. Nothing made sense. He brought over a steaming mug and placed it near her. "I'm Kyle," he said. She glanced at the cup, then at him. "You don't want my name," she whispered. "No one ever does." Kyle offered a soft smile. "Then I'll wait. Until you're ready." She blinked. Was this man real? They sat in silence, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was still, peaceful, like snow falling outside a safe window. At last, she asked, "Why did you buy me?" Kyle shook his head. "I didn't buy you. I rescued you." Her throat tightened. "Then, what am I to you?" He looked her in the eye. Calm. Certain. "You're a guest. You may rest here. Stay as long as you wish." That answer hit harder than any chain ever had. She had been sold, traded, mocked. A beast of burden in every corner of the galaxy. Her body strong. Her will worn. Her voice silenced. But this man, he saw her. Not as a tool. Not as a joke. Just as her. "I can't repay you," she murmured. "I break chairs. I can't cook. I ruin things." "You don't owe me anything," he said. She turned to the fire, and something strange happened. Her chest ached, not with pain, but with something unfamiliar. Kindness. That night, Kyle made a simple stew. Its smell sent her stomach twisting. She hadn't eaten properly in days. When he handed her a bowl, her hands shook. She dropped the spoon, and the stew splashed onto the table. "I'm sorry," she gasped, heart pounding. Kyle only grabbed a cloth, wiped the mess, and handed her the spoon again. No harm done. Tears filled her eyes. She hadn't cried when she'd been beaten. Not when she'd been called a monster. But now, in this quiet house, with one act of grace, the tears came. She turned away in shame, hiding her face. Kyle didn't say a word. He let her cry. Later, he showed her a small room with a bed. "I won't fit," she said. Kyle shrugged. "Try." She did. The bed creaked, loudly, but didn't break. He smiled. "See? Strong, like you." She blinked at him. "Why are you like this? Why do you treat me like a person?" He tilted his head. "Because you are." She didn't know what to say. That night, lying beneath a warm blanket, staring at a wooden ceiling instead of steel bars, her enormous body curled tightly, she asked herself a question that frightened her. Is this home? She awoke before dawn, her breath still slow, body heavy with rest. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. The bed, the blanket, the warmth. And it frightened her. She sat up slowly. Her arms felt like stone. Her mind whispered the old warnings. This won't last. She rose and stepped quietly into the kitchen. Nothing was locked. No one barked commands. No cameras tracked her. Kyle stood by the window, a mug of hot drink in his hands. He didn't turn. "You didn't have to wake up early," he said gently. "I don't want to be useless," she blurted. "I can clean. Lift things. Just don't throw me out." Kyle finally turned to face her. "I won't throw you out. You don't need to prove anything." "But I'm too much," she said. "Too big. Too strong. I ruin everything." He set his mug down, stepped closer, and met her eyes. Then maybe the world built things too small. She stared at him, truly stared. No one had ever said something like that to her before. People told her to shrink, to hide, to vanish. But she couldn't. She never had. She always took up space, and the world had punished her for it. That day, she tried to help around the house. She picked up a wooden chair to move it. Crack, the leg snapped. "I'm sorry," she gasped, frozen. Kyle examined the damage. "Old chair anyway. I'll fix it." She tried sweeping. The broom was too short for her reach. Her long arm knocked over a vase. Crash. She clutched her mouth in panic. Kyle peeked in, then nodded. Didn't need that one. No shouting. No strikes. Not even a sigh. But still, guilt gnawed at her. "I ruin everything," she whispered. "You're not the problem," Kyle replied calmly. But she didn't believe him. Not yet. That evening, she sat by the fireplace, her knees drawn to her chest. Her massive frame seemed smaller, shrunken under the weight of her sadness. Kyle sat nearby, calmly repairing the broken chair leg, hands steady. "Why do you fix things I break?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because you tried to help. That matters." She stared at the flames. "I've been to many places," she said. "Sold again and again. Forced to fight. Made to carry until my spine screamed. They said I was too loud. Too large. Too soft." Kyle listened, quiet. "I thought I had no worth, until you gave one credit." He looked at her, eyes steady. "I didn't buy you because I pitied you. I bought you because no one else saw your worth. But I did." "Why?" He took a moment, then answered softly. "Because you didn't break. Not on that stage. Not under their laughter. You stood tall, and most people never do." She looked at him, heart pounding. That night, as the fire faded and darkness crept in, Kyle gently placed a thick blanket over her shoulders. "You remind me of a mountain," he said. She tilted her head, unsure. "Big, strong, unshakable, beautiful, if someone takes the time to really look." She turned away, hiding the tears that streamed down her face. But Kyle didn't need to see them. He stayed. He let her cry. And for the first time in her life, the tears didn't feel like weakness. They felt like the beginning of something else. Word spread fast through the village. People whispered behind windows. Children pointed from behind corners. Some muttered when Kyle passed in the street. "He brought her here, that giant creature. She'll crush him in his sleep." The alien woman heard it all. Even when they whispered, their stares shouted. Heavy, cutting. Kyle noticed too, but he didn't seem to care. He still greeted everyone with a nod, bought vegetables from the same vendors, and walked home with calm, steady steps. But she cared. Every whisper weighed her down. Every sideways glance was another stone on her already aching chest. One afternoon, she slipped away to the village well. She wanted to carry water back before Kyle returned from work. Maybe if she helped more, they would stop seeing her as a beast. As she lifted the heavy wooden buckets, two women walked by. Their voices paused when they saw her, then resumed louder. "She's using our water now. Didn't think one of those could fit in a house. Bet he keeps her like a pet." Her hands trembled on the handles, but she lifted both buckets, one in each hand, and walked slowly home, eyes lowered. Kyle was waiting at the door. He took one bucket gently from her and smiled. "I told you not to carry these alone." She didn't respond. Her eyes avoided his. Her mouth was sealed shut by the weight of shame. "What happened?" he asked softly. "Nothing," she lied. But her silence said more than any words. That night, she sat alone on the front porch. The stars were bright, but she didn't feel their light. Her massive arms wrapped tightly around her knees. She felt clumsy, out of place, wrong. Kyle stepped out quietly and sat beside her. Cold? He asked. She shook her head. They don't want me here, she said. They think I'm a monster, that I don't belong. Kyle looked up at the night sky. They're afraid of what they don't understand. But what if they're right? She whispered. What if I really don't belong? He turned to her, his voice low but steady. This house is mine, and I say you belong. She looked at him, searching for the catch, the mockery, the lie. But there was none. She wanted to believe him, but fear has deep roots. The next day, trouble came. A group of young men stood outside Kyle's home. She peeked from behind the curtain and saw one of them kick the steps. Another shouted, "We don't want her here." Kyle stepped outside. "She hasn't harmed anyone," he said firmly. "She doesn't belong," one spat. "You're putting all of us at risk." "From what?" Kyle snapped. "A woman who cooks, cleans, and minds her own business." "She's not normal," another shouted. "Look at her." Kyle's tone turned to ice. "Her size saved my life once, during a cave-in. Would you rather she hadn't been there?" The men fell silent, but not for long. "She's not a danger," Kyle continued, "but your hatred is." They muttered, turned, and left, not quietly. One spat on the ground. Inside, she sat in a corner, arms wrapped around herself. "You heard," Kyle said gently. She nodded. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," he replied. "You're not making my life harder. You're making it better." She looked at him, truly looked. "Why do you keep fighting for me?" Kyle paused. Then, without flinching, he said, "Because someone should have done it a long time ago." That night, she stood before the mirror. She stared at her wide shoulders, her thick arms, her strong legs. She had hated them for years. But Kyle, he never looked at her with disgust. He saw strength. He saw her. And maybe, just maybe, she was never meant to shrink. Maybe she was meant to stand tall. The sky turned crimson. A strange, low rumble rippled through the earth beneath the village. Windows trembled. Birds fled into the clouds. Then, boom! A deafening crash echoed from the eastern ridge, where the old mines lay carved into the mountain. Thick, black smoke coiled into the air, blotting out the sun. The village bell rang, sharp and panicked. People screamed. Some ran. Others froze. "The mines collapsed," someone cried. "People are trapped." The support beams had given out. Kyle had been working in that mine. She stood frozen in the doorway. Her heart pounded like war drums. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but fury. Fury at helplessness. At a world that crushed and broke, then demanded silence from the strong. Not this time. Without a word, she ran. The path to the ridge was steep, treacherous with snow. The ground cracked beneath her weight, but she didn't slow. Her breath came in fierce gasps. Her colossal body moved like a force of nature, unstoppable, undeniable. When she reached the shattered mine entrance, the villagers were gathered outside in chaos. No one can get in. Too dangerous. Too heavy. She looked at the wreckage, twisted steel, broken beams, boulders the size of carts. And then, she stepped forward. A man grabbed her arm. "You'll be crushed." She shook him off, her voice molten with fury. "He's in there." No more fear. No more shame. Only purpose. She dropped to her knees and began. Her thick arms strained as she heaved a fallen beam aside. Her back bowed, her muscles screamed, but they didn't fail. She lifted what 10 men couldn't. Dragged splintered supports like twigs. Behind her, gasps rose. "She's like a machine." No, she's saving them. Dust choked the air. Blood seeped from her fingers. Her legs burned with every movement. Still, she pressed on. Then, a voice. Muffled. Weak. Help. Kale. She roared, a sound like thunder tearing through the valley, and surged forward, tearing away the final blockage. There he was, pinned beneath a beam, coughing, barely conscious. She charged in, wrapped her hands around the beam, and lifted, with pain, with power, with defiance. The villagers watched in stunned silence. A giant woman, covered in soot and blood, lifting death itself from the man who had once paid one single credit to free her. She carried him out in her arms, as though he weighed nothing. Back in the village, healers rushed to him. Kale was alive, bruised, breathless, but alive. She sat by his side, shaking, her clothes torn, her body scraped raw. She didn't care. He opened his eyes. "You came," he whispered. She nodded. "You gave me a home. I couldn't lose it." "No," he replied, voice weak but steady. "I gave you a home, because you are one." The next morning, something had changed. The village, once filled with whispers and wary glances, now echoed with a different sound. Respect. "She saved them," people murmured. "She saved all of them. I used to think she was too big, but maybe we were too small." Children approached her without fear, some with flowers in hand. Adults brought food. Even those who had once mocked her now stood at a distance, quiet, unsure how to apologize. She didn't say much, but when one little girl hugged her leg and whispered, "Thank you for being strong," she smiled. A real smile. That night, she sat by the fireplace again. Kyle rested nearby, still healing, his ribs bruised, one leg wrapped. He smiled more now. She looked at her large, bandaged hands. "You once said I was like a mountain," she murmured. Kyle looked up. "I remember. I didn't believe you. Not until now." She sat beside him, shoulders broad but relaxed. "I've spent my whole life thinking my body was a curse, that I was too much." She paused, then added, "But maybe I was made this way for moments like that." Kyle nodded. "Your size didn't save me. You did." She blinked, eyes shining. For the first time, she didn't feel like too much. She felt just right. Snow still covered the village, but something deeper had thawed. Where once there was fear, now there was curiosity. Where once silence reigned, now there were voices, soft, careful, but different. She didn't walk with her head down anymore. She walked tall. Her scars were still there, on her arms, on her back, on her heart. But so was something new. Dignity. The villagers watched as she helped repair the collapsed mine. Not because she was forced, but because she chose to. Her large hands moved with care. She lifted beams, carried heavy tools, and offered her strength without seeking reward. Children watched her from snowbanks. "She's strong, like the stories," one boy whispered. "She's not scary," another added. "She's kind." Some villagers began greeting her. Small nods, a smile here, a thank you there. And though kindness still felt foreign, she received it. At home, Kyle was healing slowly. One afternoon, she brought him a bowl of warm soup and placed it gently beside him. He looked at her and chuckled. "You didn't spill this time." She grinned shyly. "I used a bigger bowl." Kyle nodded. "Smart." She sat down across from him, warming her hands by the fire. There was a quiet between them, not empty, but peaceful. "I've been thinking," Kyle said at last. "About what?" she asked. "About building you a new chair, one that doesn't break." She raised an eyebrow. "A chair for giants?" Kyle smiled. "No, a chair for you." Her chest tightened. Not from pain, but healing. No one had ever made space for her before. She had always been told to shrink, to bend, to adapt. But Kyle built space around her. A few days later, she stepped outside and found something unexpected. In the yard, a frame. Wooden. Wide. Solid. Kyle wiped sweat from his brow and looked up. "Help me?" he asked. Together, they built it, lifting, hammering, shaping. She didn't have to hide her strength. She used it, and Kyle let her lead. When it was done, she stood before it, stunned. A chair. Her chair. Huge, sturdy, comfortable, shaped for her size, her body. "I've never had something that fit me," she whispered. Kyle looked at her with soft eyes. "Then this is the first of many things." The chair became her spot. Each evening, she sat in it wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping warm drinks, watching the snow fall. Peace, at last. One day, a little girl ran up and handed her a flower. "It's for the strong lady," she said. She held it carefully in her large hand, unsure of what to say. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, as she sat in her chair, Kyle approached holding something wrapped in cloth. He placed it in her lap. "What's this?" she asked. "Clothes," he said. "New ones. Made for you." She unfolded the bundle. Strong material, soft but sturdy, wide and long. Beautiful not because of how it looked, but because it was hers. Not stolen. Not forced. Hers. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to," Kyle replied. But she did say something. She stood, walked over, and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "Thank you for making space for me in your world." Kyle smiled. "You didn't take space," he said. "You became part of it." Later that evening, as snow drifted softly outside, she stood before the mirror once again. Her body hadn't changed, still large, still scarred. But her heart had. For the first time, she didn't wish to be smaller. She didn't want to disappear. She only wished that others like her could feel what she felt now. Accepted. Safe. Home. The snow began to melt. Days grew longer. Tiny green shoots pushed through the cold soil. Winter was ending. But something else had already changed. The alien woman, once laughed at, once left to rot on a wooden platform, now smiled more. Walked with quiet strength. She didn't trail behind Kyle like a shadow anymore. She walked beside him. One bright morning, Kyle stood at the edge of the field, rubbing the back of his neck. She approached. "You look nervous." He chuckled. "I am." "Why?" "I've been building something." She raised an eyebrow. "Another chair." Kyle smiled, but there was a flicker of something more in his eyes. "No," he said. "Something smaller, but more important." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small wooden box. She stared. Inside, a ring. Simple silver, with a green stone smooth as river glass. Her breath caught. "I bought you for 1 credit," Kyle said quietly. "But I never saw you as property." She didn't speak. Couldn't. "I didn't know what I was doing that day," he continued. "I only knew I couldn't leave you there. And now, I can't imagine a day without you." He opened the box fully and held it out to her. "You're not too much. You're exactly right. So I ask, will you stay?" He paused. "Not because you owe me. Not because I rescued you. But because you choose me. Like I chose you." Her eyes welled with tears. No one had ever asked her to stay. Not as a servant. Not even as a friend. They used her. Feared her. Discarded her. But Kyle, he waited. He offered. He saw. Not just her strength. But her. She nodded slowly, voice trembling. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stay. Always." Kyle smiled and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit. Perfectly. like everything else he'd made for her. She laughed through her tears. "I was sold for 1 credit." Kyle kissed her hand gently. "And now," he said, "you're priceless." Days passed. Their little home grew warmer, not just with fire, but with something deeper. With love. Villagers began to visit more. Children played near her without fear. She helped fix roofs, carried heavy supplies, planted gardens. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. People no longer stared with disgust. They watched with admiration. Once too large for their world, she now helped lift it. One day, she stood at the old auction block, the very one where no one had made a bid. But this time, she stood tall, dressed in the clothes Kyle had made for her. Wide, strong, beautiful. She looked out at the square, at the people, at the platform, and smiled, because she remembered what it felt like to be unwanted. And now she knew her worth had never been missing. It had only been waiting for someone brave enough to see it. That night, stars sparkled above as Kyle stoked the fire. She sat in her big chair, a folded piece of paper in her hand. He looked over. "What's that?" She smiled. "A letter. For others like me." He came to sit beside her. "Want to read it to me?" She unfolded the paper and, in a low voice, began. "To the one who feels too big for the world. You are not the problem. The world was simply built too small. But somewhere, someone will make space for you. They will see you not as too much, but as exactly right. Don't give up. Don't shrink. Your worth is not in the price they offer. It's in the love you find, and the love you give." Kyle reached over and took her hand. The fire crackled. Outside, snow melted into earth. And inside that quiet house, filled with warmth and laughter, she knew. She was no longer just someone with worth. She was someone who had found it. And she would never lose it again.